You just paid $40 for a candle, not because you needed it, not because it smelled $40 good. You paid it because right next to it, on the same shelf, sat a candle marked $80. Your brain did the math in half a second. 40 is half of 80. 40 feels like a steal. But nobody asked the only question that actually mattered. Was the candle worth $40 in the first place? You didn't ask. You couldn't ask. Because by the time you saw the price tag, your mind had already been handed a number, and that number was quietly running the whole decision. This happens to you more than you think, not just with candles, with salaries, with houses, with how much you tip, how you rate a stranger, even how long you think a war lasted. One number lands first, and everything after it bends around it like gravity around a planet. You never chose the bend. You just felt like you were being reasonable. Why does one number, seen for less than a second, have this much power over you? Picture a job interview. Not yours, someone else's, someone hiring for a role at a mid-sized company. The recruiter opens with a routine question. What's your salary expectation? The candidate, a little nervous, throws out a number just to get it over with. 65,000. That number is now in the room. It sits there for the rest of the conversation like a piece of furniture nobody can walk around. The hiring manager was prepared to offer up to 80, but now, without even meaning to, her whole sense of what's fair has shifted downward. 68 sounds generous. 70 feels like a win for the candidate. Nobody lied, nobody negotiated in bad faith. The first number simply became the frame everyone else's judgment had to fit inside. The candidate walks away thinking they did fine. They have no idea they left $12,000 on the table, invisible, because of 4 words they said in the first 90 seconds. This is called anchoring bias, and it is one of the strangest, most stubborn quirks of the human mind. Anchoring means your brain leans on the first piece of information it receives when making a judgment, even when that information has nothing to do with the actual answer. The first number, the first opinion, the first price, it becomes an anchor. And every estimate you make afterward gets dragged toward it, whether or not it deserves to be there. The psychologists who first proved this were Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, working together in the 1970s. They ran a now famous experiment. They spun a wheel in front of people, a wheel rigged to land only on 10 or 65. Then they asked a question that had nothing to do with the wheel at all. What percentage of United Nations countries are in Africa? People who saw the wheel land on 10 guessed low, around 25%. People who saw it land on 65 guessed much higher, around 45%. The wheel was random. Everyone knew it was random. And still, their brains used that meaningless number as a starting point and adjusted from there, never adjusting far enough to escape its pull. Why would a rational mind do something so irrational? Because your brain is not built to calculate every answer from scratch. That would take too long, and it would exhaust you. Instead, it uses a mental shortcut, something researchers call an anchor and adjust heuristic. You grab the first number available, and then you nudge your estimate away from it, a little at a time, until it feels right. The problem is that the nudging almost always stops too soon. You adjust, but you never adjust far enough to fully escape the anchor's gravity. Another researcher, Dan Ariely, tested this in a way that feels almost embarrassing to admit. He asked people to write down the last 2 digits of their social security number. Then he asked them to bid on items that had nothing to do with that number at all, things like wine, keyboards, even a cordless trackball. People with higher social security digits bid significantly more money than people with lower ones. A completely unrelated number, one that had zero connection to the value of anything, still shifted what people were willing to pay by as much as 300%. Read that again, 300%, from 2 random digits. This is why the original price on a sale tag matters so much, even when you know, logically, that it might be inflated on purpose. Retailers understand anchoring instinctively, even if they've never heard the term. They show you the crossed out number first because they know your brain will use it as the reference point for everything that follows. The real price becomes almost irrelevant. What matters is the gap between the anchor and the offer. It isn't only about money. Anchoring shapes how you judge people too. Show someone a resume with a strong opening line, and they'll read the rest of it more generously. Show a judge a low sentencing recommendation before a trial even begins, and studies have found their final ruling drifts toward that number even when the recommendation came from a source they were told to ignore, like a computer-generated dice roll. Your brain doesn't check its sources as carefully as you'd like to believe. It just needs a number to hold on to. Here is where it gets stranger. Anchoring doesn't only come from other people. You anchor yourself. Think about the last time you tried to estimate how long a task would take. Writing a report, painting a room, driving across town during rush hour. Your first guess, the one that pops into your head almost instantly, becomes the anchor for every guess that follows, even your own revisions. This is part of why projects so often run late. You don't estimate fresh each time you reconsider. You adjust from your first guess, and first guesses are almost always optimistic, untethered from the messy reality of how long things actually take. There's a version of this that shows up in relationships too. The first impression someone makes on you becomes an anchor for how you interpret everything they do afterward. If someone comes across as kind in your first meeting, you'll explain away a later rude comment as having a bad day. If someone comes across as cold at first, that same rude comment becomes proof of who they really are. Same behavior, different anchor, completely different conclusion. Even doctors are not immune. Research has shown that when physicians hear an initial diagnosis suggested by a colleague, even an offhand, unconfirmed one, it can anchor their thinking for the rest of the examination, making them less likely to consider alternative explanations for a patient's symptoms. Even when new evidence points elsewhere, the first idea in the room quietly outranks the ones that come later, regardless of how strong the later evidence is. So if anchoring is everywhere, quietly steering negotiations, prices, diagnoses, and first impressions, is there any way to loosen its grip? There is, but it takes something most people skip. It takes deliberately generating your own counter-anchor before anyone else can hand you theirs. In salary negotiations, this means naming your number first, before the interviewer can. Whoever speaks first sets the frame, and frames are powerful even when the other side knows exactly what you're doing. In shopping, it means covering the crossed-out price with your hand, mentally or literally, and asking a different question entirely. Not how big is the discount, but would I pay this number if I saw it with no other number beside it? In estimating how long something will take, it means deliberately imagining the worst-case version of the task before you commit to a number, so your first guess isn't dangerously optimistic from the start. None of these tricks make the bias disappear. Anchoring is baked too deep into how your brain processes numbers to fully switch off, but noticing it, catching the moment a number lands in your mind before you've had time to question it, gives you back something valuable. A pause. A half second where you can ask whether the number in front of you deserves the power it's about to have. You started this thinking about a candle, $40, half of $80, a steal you were sure you found on your own. But you didn't find it on your own. It found you, and it planted itself in your mind before you even realized a decision was being made. The next price tag you see, the next salary number, the next first impression that lands before you've had a chance to think, notice it. Not to distrust everything. Just to ask, quietly, whether that number is really the truth or just the first thing your mind happened to grab onto. If this changed how you'll look at the next price tag you see, you know what to do. Subscribe if you want more of these, and drop a comment with the last time an anchor caught you off guard. You might be surprised how many people say the exact same thing.